All right. Hopefully everyone's joining okay, but welcome to our March webinar, which is all about Certification 101. Yeah, so go ahead and hit the next slide, Katie. Sweet. And if you aren't familiar with CAE, our mission is to advance environmental education in Colorado by fostering collaboration, mobilizing support, and driving excellence. We are a network of environmental educators across the state who together can reach more than 800,000 learners in Colorado. We work to ensure everyone in Colorado has an opportunity to learn about the environment where they live. We value inclusiveness and welcome everyone to the field of environmental education. If you're not familiar with CAE's monthly webinar series, it's just monthly topics of interest to the environmental education community in Colorado with the goals to share and spark ideas, improve practice, and connect with one another. We also have a lot of awesome upcoming events and deadlines. So next Tuesday is when our conference proposals are due. If you're interested in presenting at our conference, our proposal form. Also on April 12th is our award nominations are due. So if you think someone is doing excellent work across the state, you can nominate them for award that place at our conference. April 23rd is State of Environmental and Outdoor Learning Outdoor Learning in Colorado. It's going to be all about the landscape analysis. So if you're interested in that, check it out. Coming soon will be our summer EE courses. And then later in the fall on September 19th and 20th is our annual conference. And then I think we're all very familiar with Zoom, but here's just a few reminders on the screen. So just keep your line muted while others are speaking. If you have any questions or anything that comes up, just send a message in the chat and we'll try and get all those answers, all those questions answered. And if you want to, you can type in your name and organization or where you're connecting from. And then just as a reminder, you will receive the recording from today. All right, and then I wanted to quickly just do a land acknowledgement and recognition of racial justice. So one way that we can support equity is by beginning our time today by acknowledging our history of colonization and oppression that is still continuing today. It is important to remember that what we know as Colorado today was the traditional home of the Apache, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and the Pueblo tribes, Shoshone tribe, and the Ute Nation. Historically, environmental education has been tailored to white communities, and the contributions of Black, Indigenous, and people of color are often excluded from our narrative. Black, Indigenous, and people of color have vibrant, rich histories and cultures that contribute to our faith. We all have the responsibility to continue working to change the systems that continue to allow injustice and inequity to exist. Right, and I think that's all that I have, so I'll be passing it over to Katie now.
Awesome. Well, it's great to see everyone today. Thanks for joining us to talk all about certification. And this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I actually, when I moved to Colorado, the certification committee was the very first committee that I got involved in well before I worked for CAEE. So I've had experience on the committee and putting this program together. I applied for certification and went through the whole process, and now I'm a reviewer and review certification portfolios. So hopefully I can answer whatever questions that might come up, since I have been involved in kind of all the different facets of the program. So today, our basic outline is that we're going to talk what certification is, why you might want to pursue it, what do you need to actually demonstrate in your application? How will it be reviewed? And then we'll talk about some additional resources that you can access. So we have a packed day today, but I'd love to just kick us off and get us started and give you just a minute to think about what interests you in certification and what questions do you have? And I will invite you to just add to the chat, either something that really interests you or a question that you brought with you today, so we can I can think about those throughout our time together and make sure we get all of those questions answered. So take about 60 seconds to do that. All right, I'm seeing at least one question pop up. Do other states offer certification? We'll definitely talk about that. How will it impact future job prospects? Great question. Looks like a few folks are liking that one. Give you just a few more seconds and then you can absolutely continue to add questions to the chat, and Brianna's going to help me out and holler when those come up so I make sure to answer them. Awesome. Well, great. Well, thanks to those of you who popped questions in the chat. But let's just get started with what is the Colorado Environmental Education Certification. It's a recognition that you have demonstrated competencies in environmental and outdoor learning. Those competencies are based on the North American Association of Environmental Education Guidelines for Excellence in Professional Development of Environmental Educators, and also a set of guidelines that was developed specifically here in Colorado for environmental educators. And so this process is portfolio based, which means that you get to compile a portfolio of your best work that you think demonstrates the competencies that are outlined. There are two levels of certification that you can pursue: the certified level and then the master certified level. I generally point out a couple key differences. The master certified is obviously much more beefy. A lot more goes into that, and we're looking at a much wider range of competencies. The certified level is covers the same main themes, but it asks for less evidence. In general, a couple of the big things that distinguish those: the certified level, you do not have to have created your own lesson plans or programs. You may work in a program that you are doing programs that were developed by a team or developed before you got to that organization or agency, and that works great. At the master level, we do want to see that you have written some of your own materials and see what those look like. At the master level, we also want to see that you have experience in evaluating programming. And so you have designed and implemented EE program evaluation. We'll talk more about that, but those are just a couple of the key differences. So let's take a look at just a little bit of background of the program. We started really looking at the competencies and developing what might go into a certification program back in 2005. And it took 3 years to really think through, create those guidelines, and then develop the design for the program that you're participating in today. 2008 was the first pilot run of the program. And then over the years, we have had 230 people successfully become certified environmental educators through the program. Great question about if there are certification programs in other states. There are currently 14 states that have a certification program. So you can see the states that are in green have accredited programs through NAAEE, which basically means that we went through a process to get our certification program certified. So the program went through a certification process, and that process takes you through the steps to say, yes, this program meets the highest standards and fulfills all the things that the North American Association for Environmental Education outlined as part of that program. What accreditation also means, because Colorado is accredited, or the master certification level is accredited, what that means is it's nationally recognized. So you can go anywhere in the country, and that certification is nationally recognized as meeting those national standards. For the states that are in blue, they have a certification program, but it hasn't yet been accredited by NAAEE. And so the state has decided what that criteria is, and it may or may not align up with the national criteria.
Katie, we have a question in the chat asking if you can transfer your certification between states.
So at the master level, it is nationally recognized. So you can say you're a certified environmental educator in any state, no matter what. At the certified level, that level doesn't meet those national guidelines. So you would need to say that you're a Colorado certified environmental educator. Great question. So let's talk a little bit about why participate in certification. There are a couple different reasons. It's a way to demonstrate strong skills in environmental literacy. It's something that you can put on your resume, list on job applications, and talk about with potential employers. If you're an organization that has certified environmental educators, it's a way to recognize the quality of your staff. Somebody else has looked at their skills and kind of given them this stamp of approval that they meet those competencies. And we've definitely heard from folks who are certified that that's something they get asked about in interview processes and things like that. You also become part of a network of highly qualified environmental educators in Colorado and nationally. But most importantly, I think, is this last reason. This is a very personalized opportunity for your own professional development and growth. Because this is a portfolio and not a course, you're building and putting together a portfolio of your work. And throughout the process, you get the opportunity to reflect on that work. Why do you do the things that you do? What makes them work? What makes them not work? Where could you strengthen your instruction? What ways could you build your skills? It's a self-guided process that really allows you to tailor that professional development and professional growth to yourself. And I will say, for me, that was the most important part of the process. I really had that opportunity to explore in a more deep way why certain instructional strategies work and what areas I wanted to grow in. So let's talk about the knowledge and skills that you need in order to be certified. There are 5 big themes that you will need to demonstrate, and this is true of both the certified level and the master level. You need to show an understanding of these 5 different themes. So the first one is environmental literacy. This is all about what you know and are able to do as an educator. What skills and knowledge do you have that then you're teaching to others? Foundations of environmental education is really about, do you understand the goals and objectives of the field? What's some of the research and what's some of the things that the field is founded on? Professional responsibilities of the environmental educator is really about, what are best practices? What should we be doing to make sure that we are a strong educator? The 4th theme is really the beefiest. There's the most meat in this one, and that gets into planning and implementing EE. How do you actually do it? What does it look like? And then finally, which is sometimes the hardest part of the portfolio, is assessment and evaluation. And a lot of times those 2 words are used interchangeably, but we're actually talking about them as 2 distinct things. So assessment is how do I know what this individual learner learned? And evaluation is really about program evaluation. How do I know that the experience that I set up is working? So that could entail some assessments and figuring out what the learner learned, but it could also have to do with was the staff training well put together? Were the conditions appropriate? All of those types of things. So those are the five big buckets. And under each bucket is a series of competencies. So I'd like us to take 5 minutes and dig into these competencies. So Brian, I'm going to ask you to put that link in the chat, tinyurl.com/CAEE cert. If you want to bring it up on your phone or your device, you can also take a picture of the QR code here. So I will pause for just a second while folks are navigating to this screen. And then I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And what you're seeing should look something like this. It should look like a bunch of refrigerator magnets spread out. What I'd like you to do is we're going to take 5 minutes individually. You can turn off your screen, but I'd like you to dig into these competencies. So you should be able to move these around the screen and put them in different boxes. You can see I've already moved mine around a little bit. The colored boxes are the themes. So go ahead and move those so that each one is in its own box. And then what I'd like you to do is just try to match the competencies with what theme they might go in. So let's see here. Here's an example. Improving instruction. I'll give you this one. Lives in assessment and evaluation. How are we using assessment and evaluation to improve our instruction? Couple caveats as you're moving things around on the page. These are the buckets that we put these competencies into. Many of them can live in multiple buckets and they definitely overlap. So the idea is not necessarily to get the right answer here, but it's just to play with them a little bit, get your brain thinking about what the different competencies are so that when you dig into the portfolio, you have a better feel for what you need to demonstrate. So go ahead, turn off your camera and start seeing if you can match some of these competencies up with the theme that they might belong in. Take about 30 more seconds to finish up your thoughts if you haven't already. And I'll ask, is there anybody who's willing to go out on a limb and unmute and throw out what things you put into theme 1, environmental literacy?
I can go.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah, I said a climate for learning about and exploring the environment, knowledge of environmental processes and systems, personal and civic responsibility, and questioning, analysis, and interpretation skills.
Awesome. I think I'm missing one that you said. There we go. Did I get them all?
Yep, that's it.
All right. Great work. And again, I just want to say all of these could live in multiple boxes. So if you put them somewhere else, it doesn't mean they couldn't go there. It just might not be where the planning committee originally put them. So questioning, analysis, and interpretation skills, absolutely. What we're looking for here is for you to be able to demonstrate, are you able to use critical reasoning, look at different sources, interpret data, all of those types of things. Are you able to do that as an educator? Knowledge of environmental processes and systems, absolutely. What do you know, and what professional development, what education background do you have that gives you the knowledge that you need to have to be able to teach? This can look really different. A lot of folks put transcripts in their portfolios or lists of coursework to demonstrate that. This one is often a lot of different things could be evidence of that knowledge of environmental processes and systems. Sometimes it's a newsletter article that someone wrote about a scientific topic, those types of things. And personal and civic responsibility, absolutely, is one of the things that we want to know. What is your personal and civic responsibility? How do you take action for the environment? What does that look like for you as an educator or as an individual, really? A climate for learning about and exploring the environment could definitely mean a lot of things. We actually put that down in the planning and implementing environmental education. And really, what we're thinking about when we think about that climate for learning is how do we, as educators, set up the context so that our students feel physically safe? What's the risk management around a program? That they feel emotionally and intellectually safe. How do they feel comfortable asking questions? All of those types of things. That can be demonstrated through safety plans or notations in a lesson plan or a program plan about how you might handle some different pieces of that. Awesome. One more thing lives in theme 1, and that is this process of addressing environmental issues. And as an environmental educator, we want to know that you know how to investigate and address an environmental issue. And I will say a lot of times, one of the pieces of evidence we get for this is like papers that folks have written in a previous science course that they've taken at some point in time about an environmental issue, which is great. What you want to double check for, and I think one of the stumbling blocks on this one is making sure that you're addressing the issue from both the environmental standpoint and that natural system side, but also that social system side. So who does that issue impact? What are their values that they want to see? How do they make decisions about the issue? So making sure that both of those sides of an issue analysis is in whatever evidence that you bring forward. Awesome. Well, thanks, Wendy, for kicking us off. Is there anybody willing to share what they put in theme 2?
I put the climate for learning about and exploring the environment.
Anything else go in there, Sai?
I was still moving a couple of them around, but I felt like that one was in the right place.
Gotcha. We did end up putting that one actually in theme 4 and really thinking about that climate for learning about and exploring the environment around creating that physical, emotional, and intellectual safety. But I could definitely see how that would fit in multiple buckets. Some other things that might go into theme 2 are looking at what's your knowledge of environmental education materials and resources? Understanding the fundamental characteristics and goals of environmental education. Understanding I feel like I'm missing one. We'll come back. I don't see anything else, but those two definitely live in theme 2. Anybody willing to share what they put in theme 3?
I can go. I put emphasis on education and advocacy.
Definitely see that living in theme 3 for sure. Anything else go in there?
I also put exemplary environmental education practice. And then questioning, actually, you already said that one, sorry. That's pretty much the ones I knew for sure.
Awesome. Perfect. Great. Yes. Exemplary environmental education practice absolutely goes in theme 3. And that's we often see folks present evidence of like a letter of recommendation from a supervisor or an evaluation that somebody has done of their teaching, of you as an instructor. We have a code of ethics that we ask you to sign and put in your portfolio. So that's all ways that you can demonstrate exemplary environmental education practice. One of the other professional responsibilities of the environmental educator is ongoing learning and professional development. And so really thinking about how do we as educators continue to learn and grow our skills. And so we do ask you to document evidence of how you are continuing your learning, what you think your strengths are, and what areas you might want to grow in. And so that can look like a reflection of some of your experiences with professional development. Some folks include certificates of completion for professional development, or even just a list of continuing learning that they have done. In the rubric, you're going to find emphasis on education, not advocacy, in the planning and implementation theme, but it absolutely could live in theme 3 for sure. When we're talking about education, not advocacy, both those things are very important. So I don't want it to make it look like education is more important than advocacy. What that is about is how do you demonstrate that you're letting students bring their own perspectives rather than telling them what they should think about a certain issue or topic. And what does that look like? I will say most of the time in portfolios, we get essays or reflections that talk about what that looks like in programming. Occasionally, a lesson plan will be a great way to show it if you are showcasing how you're bringing in those multiple perspectives, honoring student voice, those types of things. Awesome. So we've already got 2 in our planning and implementing environmental education. What's missing from this section?
I said knowledge about learners and learning, knowledge of various teaching methods, and planning for instruction.
Absolutely. All of those things live in this bucket. So the ones we haven't talked about yet, the ones we just added, in most cases, folks will put something in their portfolio that's a lesson plan, either that they've written or one that they teach frequently, and they'll write a reflection on it. So they'll talk about, why is this appropriate for the age group of learners I had, or what adjustments did I make based on the prior knowledge of my learners, or their background or characteristics. How did I make adjustments to that? A lesson plan can also show that you know those various teaching methods because you're using them. So talking a little bit about why they work in this context, in this setting, can be a great reflection to add to a lesson plan. And then planning for instruction is really thinking about, do you have those goals and objectives in the programs you teach, either when you're developing them, or if you're teaching a program, how are you making sure that you're hitting those goals and objectives, and that you understand what the outcome you want to get is, for sure. Those are all great additions. We've got one already in assessment and evaluation, improving instruction. Anything that anyone would add to the assessment and evaluation part?
Veronica in the chat said assessment that is part of instruction.
Oh, thank you. Yes, absolutely. We'll add a couple more in here. Assessment that is part of instruction, evaluating programming, and learner outcomes all live in this category. So what we're looking for in learner outcomes is that when you submit a lesson plan or an activity, do your learner outcomes, your objectives, match whatever your assessment is? So if your objective is that students connect more to nature, but your assessment is how many trees can they identify, those two things don't match. And so that's what reviewers will be looking for, is how do those two things match up? Assessment that is part of instruction, those are all those times during programming that we ask questions to make sure that students are following along with us. Maybe we play a game or do an activity that helps us check, is everybody getting it, or do we need to back up and reflect on that? So often that is a reflection, giving some examples of experiences that you have had, that you can demonstrate that throughout your teaching and your instruction, that you can show that you know where learners are at. And then, as we said, evaluating programming is really looking at a program as a whole. Is it working the way it's supposed to and doing what we thought it was going to do? And again, that's a big difference from the certified level to the master level. In the master level, you actually have to have done a program evaluation, whereas in the certified level, you just really need to explain why evaluating programming is important. And here are the two that I lost and couldn't find earlier. So the evolution of the field of environmental education lives in foundations. That's knowing a little bit about the history, a little bit about how the field came to be, what research is out there. We ask for a lot more of that in the master level than we do in the certified level. And so you'll have to give a lot more information if you're applying for master. And then how environmental education is implemented also lives up here in theme 2, and really understanding the foundations of environmental education. And that's really demonstrating that you understand the many different contexts and ways that environmental education can happen. And so looking at partners and other resources that you can tap into, and demonstrating that is often what we will see in that category. So those are the competencies that you have to demonstrate in your portfolio. And as we mentioned, a few examples of evidence that you could put in your portfolio to demonstrate those things. But there are many, many, many more. Every portfolio looks very different. None are the same length. And depending on your context, your background, you may have very different types of evidence, and that is great. And that's what we want to see. So you can always reach out with questions to kind of feel out if something meets the criteria or not. But the rubric is going to be your best way to really look at these different competencies and understand what reviewers will be looking for when they review your portfolio. So let me flip back to our slideshow here, but hopefully you got a chance just to get a feel for some of the other, some of the competencies that we're looking at. And we will send you a copy of this PowerPoint. So you'll notice here, I'm going to skip a bunch of slides because we talked through it on the screen. But for your reference afterwards, you can see what all the competencies are that live in each one of the categories. So a few more examples of evidence that you might provide in your portfolio. Like I said, we've gotten all kinds of evidence. And one thing I like to highlight is that your portfolio is your own. And so make it something that will meet the requirements, but that will also work for you. One of my favorite examples of a portfolio that we got one time had a Boston Marathon race card time in it. And while that didn't demonstrate necessarily any of the environmental education priorities, if this individual was showcasing a portfolio to a future employer, that's something that shows dedication and perseverance and setting a goal and reaching it. So you might want to include things like that that will be useful to you in other settings. And we really want you to make your portfolio your own. We've received portfolios that are very visual, some that use videos. I will say just a few things to think about when using videos. Make sure that you provide enough context in the video that we can actually see a skill taking place. Sometimes if it's like real short clips, you can't actually see the full skill taking place, but also make sure they're not so long that reviewers might miss some things. You really want to hone in on what you want reviewers to look at, or tell them which place to pay attention to. We love things like resumes, as we said, lesson plans, activity outlines, program outlines, those types of things. Letters of recommendation are enormously helpful. You might have a variety of different reflections or different work products that you can provide and include. So let's talk a little bit about the process. We've talked about what you have to demonstrate and some of the ways that people often demonstrate those things. But what's the process for putting your portfolio together? The first thing I would, Brianna put the link to our webpage with all the information about certification in the chat. But the first thing I would do is submit an interest form, and that just tells us that you're interested and that you're looking to do this in the future. And that way we can send you reminders, we can send you additional information, things that we think you might find useful as they come up. Portfolio development is really on your own time. It can take as little time or as long as you want it to. It's a very self-paced process using the rubric to compile that evidence and make sure you're demonstrating each of the competencies. Once you've put that portfolio together, you want to submit that along with your certification fee. And you do that through our website. There's a submission form. And then the portfolio will get reviewed by 3 different reviewers. That process takes about 3 months to complete, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. And at that point, you'll get notified of whether or not you can be certified. The review process, as I said, 3 different people will review your portfolio, and that's because reviewers are human. They miss things. So by having 3 different people look through it and pull out what resonates with them and what they see, after they review it and score the portfolio using the rubric, they'll come together and have a conversation. And the reviewers will come to consensus on how they rate your portfolio, whether it's what level it falls at, whether you've met the criteria, maybe you're still developing in that area, or maybe it's at a novice level. Reviewers generally have about a month to review the portfolio individually. We give ourselves plenty of time then to schedule that conversation and that meeting together, and then compile the scores before we are able to send them back to you. So it does take a little while, but it allows us to be thorough and give reviewers plenty of time to take a look at your portfolio. If reviewers don't see the criteria in the evidence that you provided, they will never tell you, no, you can't be certified. So if they find something that's missing or maybe not quite strong enough, what they're going to do is send you feedback and give you the opportunity to resubmit. You do not have to resubmit your entire portfolio, only the piece of evidence that reviewers felt was missing. But you can really, and there's no additional fee for that. You can take as long as needed. We want you to get to the point where you can be certified. So the process is open to enable you to do that. I've been talking a lot about the rubric. So what does that look like? There are 2 different rubrics for each level of certification. So if you take a look at the master rubric here, you can see the theme up here at the top. And you'll remember from an earlier slide, there was 5 of those, and one of those big buckets was environmental literacy. And then in this left-hand column here, you'll see the different competencies. So at the master level, one of the competencies that falls under questioning, analysis, and interpretation skills is, do you understand the nature of inquiry? So then it outlines in the next 3 columns, what does that look like? Novice is not meeting the criteria. Developing is getting there. And master is what we're looking to see. So this master level column is what you want to look at as your checklist for what you make sure is included in your portfolio. This is the most important column in the rubric. for you to pay attention to. If you have trouble thinking about what evidence might look like for this particular competency, there are some suggested responses. You do not have to use this evidence. It's just an idea. But again, all the details that are in the master level might not be listed in that suggested response. So you really want to focus on that master level column. At the bottom, you'll see we encourage you to submit this rubric along with your portfolio to rate yourself where you think you are. And then you can also use this as a roadmap to your portfolio. Sometimes you'll submit one piece of evidence that covers 4 different competencies. You don't need to put that in your portfolio 4 different times, but you might list here, hey, look at this piece again. You can find what you're looking for there. So you can use this as a roadmap. The certified rubric looks a little bit different. Similar, but a little bit different. Again, you'll see the theme up here in the upper left-hand corner and the competencies listed underneath. The competencies that are listed underneath on the certified rubric list all the competencies, but that doesn't mean that you have to demonstrate all the competencies. What you have to demonstrate falls in this adequate column. As long as you are demonstrating everything that falls into that adequate column, you are eligible to get certified. At the certified level, we also have a target level, so that's going a little bit above and beyond. But really what you're going to be mostly paying attention to is that adequate level. Similarly to the master level rubric, there is a suggested response for your reference. And then there is also a place where you can, again, use the rubric as that roadmap and tell reviewers where to find things so they don't miss it. If you have another way to organize your portfolio, that's just fine too. But this has been a helpful tool for some of our applicants. Couple more things I'll mention. If you're wondering about cost for certification, the certified level at the member rate is $60 or $100 for non-members. And the master level is $200 for members and $240 for non-members. We do ask you to recertify every 7 years and demonstrate that you are continuing to participate in professional development and do a very short reflection on what you've learned over the last 7 years to maintain and keep that certification current. Couple of last tips that I'll throw out there. If you are someone who's been in the field for a while or someone who has worked in different states, there's no time limit on the evidence that you include. You can include evidence that you created just for certification or something that you did in your work 20 years ago. Either is fine. That work can have happened in Colorado, but it doesn't have to. You might have experience in another state. That evidence can be included in your portfolio as well, as long as it demonstrates the competencies. We don't want you to reinvent the wheel. We want you to use what you have and use that body of work that you have compiled. And so my recommendation is always to start by just going through the rubric and seeing what you already have that might work as evidence, and then filling in the rest of the pieces. We invite you and encourage you to contact us as much or as frequently as you need to with questions. We're happy to talk through the process. If anything's confusing or you just want advice on what to include, we're happy to do that. Couple other places you can find great information. The North American Association for Environmental Education has a free ebook called Across the Spectrum that if you're looking for background in theme 2, the Foundations of Environmental Education. That has some great information in it. The Guidelines for Excellence in Environmental Education are also a great publication to look into. If you're digging into some of these competencies, there's great information there. We offer an online course, usually starting in January, running through March, that will actually, each module of the course walks through different pieces of the portfolio process. All of the assignments are aligned with things you might submit for evidence. And if you are a person who would like just more background in some of the competencies, that's a great option. Or B, if you're a person who's like, I need a schedule and I need a due date for some of these things, the course can be a great option. And then finally, if you're looking for more background, particularly in that theme 2, NAAEE has free online modules going over the history of EE, what is EE, equity and inclusion in EE, and research and evaluation. So those are some great tools as well. And with that, I know that's a lot of information all about certification and what you might include in a portfolio, but I'd love to take these last 5 minutes and open it up for questions. Brianna, was there anything in the chat that we